Good morning. We will get started in a few minutes after allowing more participants to join. The June 11th, 2026 Federal Freedom of Information Act Advisory Committee meeting, the penultimate meeting of the 2024 to 2026 term. I'm Dan Levinson, this committee's alternate designated federal officer. Kirsten Mitchell, the committee's designated federal officer, is unable to be with us today. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and streamed on the National Archives YouTube channel and is a public meeting in accordance with the Federal Advisory Committee Act, FOIA. I confirm that we have a quorum with 16 members present in accordance with the committee's bylaws. Deborah Moore of the Department of Education is unable to join us today. I also want to note that Sean Glendenning is unable to attend today's meeting. However, the committee's charter calls for the OIP director or their designee to be on the committee. So we have another Sean O'Neill, here to represent OIP. Sean is OIP's Chief of Staff, and his participation in the meeting has been cleared by NARA's Office of General Counsel. Because this is a public meeting, we ask members to keep their cameras on. However, Neva Brock is unable to have her camera on today. The meeting materials, including the agenda, the slides, and draft recommendations, are available on the FOIA Advisory Committee page of our OGIS website at www.archives.gov/OGIS. Thank you to the audiovisual team at the National Archives for their behind-the-scenes support. And I will now turn the meeting over to Alina Simo, Director of the Office of Government Information Services, OGIS, the FOIA Ombuds, and this committee's chairperson. Alina, over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone. If we could advance to the next slide. I'm very happy to welcome everyone today. I am Alina Simo, Director of OGIS and the chairperson of the FOIA Advisory Committee for this term. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to the penultimate meeting, the 10th meeting of our 6th term. Since our last meeting on May 7th, committee members have continued to dedicate their time, expertise, and energy to examining some of the most challenging and important issues facing the FOIA community. I am extremely grateful for their ongoing commitment and engagement. As a reminder, the committee's work is being carried out through 3 subcommittees: Volume and Frequency Subcommittee, Implementation Subcommittee, and Statutory Reform Subcommittee. I know all 3 subcommittees have been very hard at work, and today we will hear updates on their discussions, with their recommendations they would like to advance, and ultimately we will be taking a vote on each of the 7 recommendations that are before the committee today. I'd like to just take a minute, chairperson privilege. In getting ready for today's meeting, I actually did an inventory to see where we're at. So we have actually passed 4 recommendations already. This committee has been very ambitious and very active. We have passed SR1, and we have passed SR2 by my count, as well as SR3. SR stands for statutory reform. And we have also passed SR7. Everyone in agreement with that? Statutory reform has been very active. Thank you. So we will actually hear recommendations from the other 2 subcommittees as well as statutory reform today. So before we launch into our meeting agenda, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. In accordance with the Federal Advisory Committee Act, FACA, we have now posted both the minutes and the transcripts from our April 2nd and May 7th meetings. On our website, you will find committee members' biographies. And please also visit and follow our blog, the FOIA Ombuds. During today's meeting, I want to encourage committee members to use the raise hand icon at the bottom of your screen when you wish to speak or ask a question. The raise hand option is Perhaps better than using the host panelist option from the drop-down menu in the chat when you want to speak or ask a question, but Dan and I will try to monitor both. And if you want to also use the chat function to chat me or Dan directly, you're certainly welcome to do that on housekeeping matters. An important note to both committee members and all Zoom participants that are joining us today: in order to comply with the spirit and intent of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, please use the Zoom chat function for housekeeping and procedural matters only. Please do not enter any substantive comments in the chat function, as they will not be recorded in the transcript of the meeting. If any committee member needs to take a break during the course of the meeting, please do not disconnect from the web event. Instead, mute your microphone by using the microphone icon and turn off your camera by using the camera icon. Please send a quick chat to me and Dan to let us know if you'll be gone for more than a few minutes, and join us again as soon as you can. An important reminder to all committee members and myself as well: please identify yourselves by name and affiliation each time you speak. It really helps make the transcript more clear. In addition, our minutes will also be easier to put together. Members of the public who wish to submit written public comments to the committee may do so using our public comments form, which is available at www.archives.gov/OJIS/public-comments. We do review all public comments, and if they comply with our public comments posting policy, we post them as soon as we are able. And we will have a public comment period at the end of our meeting today, as we have in every one of our meetings. As we noted in our Federal Register notice announcing this meeting, public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per individual. So we can move forward. Any questions on housekeeping? I know I go over the same rules every time, so hopefully by now everyone has memorized them. We have a lot to discuss today. Each of the subcommittees, as I mentioned before, has one or more recommendations to present for discussion and ultimately for a committee vote. When we are getting ready to vote, I'm going to ask Dan to go over the voting rules again, just everyone be reminded about what the rules are. And I also want to remind you that after this meeting, we have just one more meeting scheduled, which is July 16th, during which we will vote on the final report that the working group is putting together. And I just want to express my thanks to the working group, Shelley and Frank and Sarah. I very much appreciate your efforts, and I know we're going to put together a fabulous report. So before I turn over the meeting to the first subcommittee, volume and frequency, I am going to ask Dan, our alternate DFO, to provide a few updates. Dan, over to you.
Thank you, Alina. So at the May meeting, DFO Kirsten Mitchell explained that the government members on the FOIA Advisory Committee represent their agencies, but non-government members represent a specific stakeholder group. The bylaws state that any federal employees appointed to the committee will serve on the committee in their official capacity and exercise their own individual best judgment on behalf of the government in committee deliberations from any conflicts of interest. So Ryan Mulvey asked what it means for the committee's government representatives to exercise individual best judgment, and Kirsten answered the question via email to the committee members. But since this was asked at the public meeting, I'm providing the answer here as well. So government members who serve in their official capacity are appointed for their FOIA expertise and experience, and they are expected to rely on that expertise and experience as they participate on the committee. At the same time, they are participating on the government's behalf. As such, their professional experience and FOIA guidance from DOJ or their agency guides them in their deliberations and other committee work. They are to put the U.S. government's interests before their own personal interests. So I hope that answers the question. And we are expecting votes today, and I just want to remind members that any committee member, including the chairperson, may move that the committee vote. The bylaws require no second, but it is habit. If a voice vote is not unanimous, or if it is unclear who is voting which way, I may do a roll call. And a quick update on nominations for the 2026 to 2028 term. The nominations period closed on June 1st, and the nominations are under review, and appointments will be coming out later this summer. We have published a schedule of our meetings for the 26 to 28 term on the FOIA Advisory Committee page of our website. So please have a look and mark your calendars. And with that, I turn the mic back over to Alina.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Any questions before we get started on our recommendations? I don't see any hands. Okay. So first up, we're going to hear from the Volume and Frequency Subcommittee, co-chaired by Nick Wittenberg and Nieva Brock. Nick and Nieva, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Alina. And I'll turn it over to Nieva in a minute, but just want to really thank Shelley for all the work she's been doing for our subcommittee. It really, it's just been really impressive and an honor to work with her. So I'll turn it over to Nieva if you have any comments as well.
Thank you, Nick. This is Nieva for Department of War. I wanted to mention that I truly appreciate Shelley really carrying the water here. Shelley and Dave have been amazing, and it's been wonderful serving on this committee with you. And with that said, I would like Shelley to take over the discussion on our recommendations. Thank you, Shelley.
Thanks. Thanks all. It's been a pleasure. Next slide, please. Thank you. So previously we had presented to all of you 2 recommendations, but we decided to move forward just this one. The other recommendation had focused on the next term of the FOIA Advisory Committee, asking them to use the data from the implementation subcommittee and our volume and frequency survey data to focus on some priority areas that we found. We decided to move that into narrative in our subcommittee report and then also in the final report. So that left us here with this recommendation. So our recommendation here is that federal agencies should align standard staffing levels and technological resources to meet the increasing levels of FOIA requests by analyzing existing backlogs, the volume and complexity of requests, and the workload assigned to employees. Specifically, agencies should consider the total work that includes requests and backlogs and the capacity for employees to respond to these requests. And so in previous meetings, we had provided you with data that we had collected in a survey, and our subcommittee goes over that in great detail. So I'm just going to briefly outline some of our reasoning here as a reminder. We know that there have been deep cuts in staffing in the agencies and that backlogs continue to rise. We saw the recent Freedom of Information Act Ombudsman 2026 report for fiscal year 2025 that came out showing this clearly. But we also found in our survey responses that participants were calling for increased staffing and more efficient technology to manage requests, but they also felt that there was a lack of understanding about the workload necessary to meet the needs of the requesters. So we are recommending that agencies review all of these elements to ensure that FOIA teams are properly supported and prepared to respond to requests in a timely manner. So I'm happy to answer any other questions from the committee.
I don't see any hands, Shelley.
I see Mary Ann.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mary Ann. Yes, please, go ahead.
Hi, Mary Ann Manheim, NIH. I just have a basic question about the history of the already existing 67 recommendations over the years. Have we never had another recommendation for properly staffing and funding FOIA that's already out there? Is this really the first time this, I mean, that's how I'm reading this. Or does that actually already exist in some form? I feel like that would have been the first thing someone said like 10 years ago, but I don't know. I feel like every road leads to this same recommendation. Right? I mean, Shelley, right? Like it seems like we're there all the time. So I just wondered if this is like one more way of us saying properly staff and fund technology for FOIA. So we keep throwing out recommendations sometimes, and I'm like, we're going to just ignore this one now too, right? So I just want to see like, or maybe we won't. I hope we don't ignore recommendations, but does saying it over and over in some way, or maybe it's never been said before. I just don't know the history enough off the top of my head of all these recommendations to see how this will actually maybe make a difference other than just saying it again, and making major changes or anything like that. So, I mean, the right sentiment, absolutely, but I don't know how many times we keep saying it in different ways. So that's all.
So I did a really quick search of our dashboard, which I invite everyone to go look at on our website. I searched the word staffing. So we do have 4 staffing recommendations from last term, but they were fairly specific. And the labor of that has been turned over to the COCACI, which is one of our 2 committees of the Chief FOIA Officers Council. Nothing comes to mind immediately, Marianne. I understand why you're expressing the sentiment that you are. I certainly appreciate that. But maybe Dan or Kimberly, our other alternate DFOs with us today, if they see anything else, please chime in. I don't see anything else immediately.
Alina, this is Kimberly, the other alternate DFO. We do have one recommendation, 2020-13, which states agencies will review their FOIA-related technological and staffing capabilities within 2 years to identify resources needed to respond to current and anticipated FOIA demands. We actually have marked that recommendation as completed because agencies have reported in the 2022 and 2023 Chief FOIA Officer reports on this question, this recommendation, and we have been tracking it in OGIS annual reports data as well. We have a note here that says we'll continue to encourage agencies to review FOIA staffing and technology.
If I could add, Shelley Kimball, Johns Hopkins University. I think that one of the things that makes this one unique as well is the fact that we're kind of in a whole new world when it comes to FOIA staffing and technology after these drastic cuts in some agencies for staffing, and also showing that agencies are still telling us that this is an issue. We saw it in the focus groups, we saw it in the survey data, and then in the recent report, it's also showing that it's still an issue.
And I see that Nick has his hand up.
It just is probably for the DFOs or for Alina. Does it make sense that we make the recommendation again? So we're making this recommendations to Congress because they're very excited to read this report. To reiterate, I think this proposal here, that's just my question for more, I think, technical interest.
Nick, I just want to be clear that I understand your question. Are you asking whether OGIS will transmit this recommendation to Congress? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm just saying, do we make this recommendation? So even though it's made in the past, does it make sense to remake a proposed recommendation again? If like Shelley was saying, it's kind of different from the previous recommendation, and I don't know if it's like litigation where you can reincorporate by reference type of theory, but I kind of think it is, in my opinion, that we make the recommendation again, and it's not repetitive or redundant.
Noted. No res judicata here. Okay.
Jason has his hand up as well.
Thank you,
How would
Jason.
you like to say that?
Jason Barron, University of Maryland. I just wanted to note that for completeness, 2020 recommendation 2020-20 had that we recommend that Congress directly address the issue of funding for FOIA offices to meet legal obligations. And I understand that we have another recommendation this term with respect to out of the Statutory Reform Committee, but we definitely have addressed resource issues in the 2 recommendations that have been mentioned here. And we have, Marianne, we've addressed in our final reports from the committee for any number of terms the issue of resources. So it is definitely something that has been a through line for this advisory committee.
Thank you, everyone, for helping to answer that.
All right, anyone else? I don't see any other hands up. Shelley, do you have anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay. Nick and Yeva, do you guys want to drive the vote moving forward?
Yeah, I'll let you call the vote.
What do you mean by call the vote? Do you want me to just say, shall we vote?
We have a
Okay.
motion to vote.
All right. I make a motion to vote to accept VF1 as a recommendation for this term.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right,
All
that
right.
was Nick. All right.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Dan, I don't hear any opposition.
Is there are there any abstentions? Oh,
I was just going to ask, any abstentions?
no abstentions? Okay, it passes unanimously.
All right. Great job, volume and frequency. Okay, let's keep moving. So next up, we are going to hear from the Implementation Subcommittee, co-chaired by Jason Barron and Marianne Mannheim. So Marianne and Jason, you have the floor.
Yes, Lena, but I did have my hand up at the
Oh, I'm
end.
sorry, I missed it. I apologize.
And so I'll take the privilege of having the baton passed to me here. Can I ask the Volume and Frequency Subcommittee a question? In your final report, it's not about the recommendation. So you can take that slide down and move on. The report of the subcommittee talks about how some individuals in response to the survey talked about the need for clarification in the FOIA statute itself concerning artificial intelligence and requests generated by AI means, and having the statute itself clarify that only people, humans, should be able to file requests. I am not supportive of that, but I was curious as to whether I'm not supportive of a statutory change, but I'm curious as to whether the subcommittee seriously considered the implications of what the responders were saying and thought about a recommendation on the subject of AI-generated requests.
I'll respond. Shelley Kimball, Johns Hopkins University. So that actually, we had put in that second recommendation as sort of ideas for the next term to consider. We felt that it was a huge concept to kind of work through. And because the data came in so late because of so many delays, it was something that we did talk about very briefly, but we just didn't have the time to tackle something that complex. And so we were hoping that the data that we put in the subcommittee report would then become fodder, perhaps, for the next term.
Well, let me thank you for that. And let me just put a marker down that I think in our final report coming out of the committee this term, that point should be highlighted. Okay, so Alina, do I have the floor?
As always, yes, please.
So again, Jason Barron and Marianne and I have really valued the work of everyone on the implementation subcommittee. There are three recommendations we have, and I'm going to turn it over to Shelley Kimball to walk through the recommendations for everyone.
Thanks, Jason. And in an effort to make this not so much me talking today, I'll do one, and then I'm going to pass off to Sarah and Frank to help me out. So next slide, please. I'll do the first one. So the recommendations that you'll see from us today, we've had a chance to discuss before. You've seen them all before. And so again, I'll just give kind of a brief underscoring of the reasoning here. So on this first one, this is where we are recommending a collaborative group through networking group through COCACI. And so this emerged directly from our focus groups this session. We found that participants really needed and wanted some way to connect professionally to talk about the work that they're doing, share best practices. And along the line, we spoke to different agencies to kind of see how to shape this. And Deborah spoke with COCACI, who also expressed an interest in developing this idea. So our recommendation is, as you see here, is to increase collaboration and connection among federal agency FOIA professionals, the Chief FOIA Officers Committee on Cross-Agency Collaboration and Innovations Resources Working Group, assisted by the Office of Government Information Services and the Office of Information Policy as appropriate, should establish a process for creating and maintaining small self-governing cohorts of federal FOIA professionals interested in collaboration, support, and sharing of best practices. So again, open to any questions or discussion.
See any hands? So everyone is fully satisfied. Thank you, Shelley. Do you want to hand it off to Sarah or Frank?
Are we taking a vote on each one?
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yes, I guess we could do it that way. Absolutely. Let's take a vote on this first recommendation, assuming there are no other questions. Do I have a motion?
Motion to vote
On.
proposed recommendation I1.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jason. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Nay. Any abstentions? Okay. I'm checking in with Sean O'Neill. Sean, it has been habit in the past for OIP to abstain from some recommendations. Are you voting aye? I just want to make sure we're taking your vote into account.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Great, good job. Thank you. All right,
Okay.
next.
Thanks all. And I'm going to pass to Sarah for the next recommendation.
Good morning, everyone. Sarah Weichsel, American Historical Association. Can we move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this recommendation was based on our data gathering, which showed that increasing agency awareness of committee recommendations is the single most important step towards increasing implementation of those recommendations. And in attempting to write a recommendation to address this, we felt that leveraging an existing public reporting mechanism, such as the annual Chief FOIA Officer Report, would represent a low-cost and low-effort way to reach all the agencies and increase their awareness and implementation of committee recommendations. So that is a bit of the background for proposed recommendation I2, which is in an effort to increase the awareness and adoption of FOIA Advisory Committee recommendations, the Department of Justice's Office of Information Policy should require status reporting from agencies on implementation of recommendations, either through questions in annual Chief FOIA Officer reports or through another appropriate publicly available reporting mechanism. Are there any comments or questions?
Sarah, I don't see any hands, but perhaps people need more coffee.
Oh, Nieva has her hand up.
Who has her hand up?
Nieva?
Nieva.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see that. Thank you. Neva, go ahead, please.
Good morning again, Nieva Brock, Department of War. I'm just wondering, what is the ultimate, uh, I guess, success? What does success mean for you here? If the OIP does ask about the recommendations, is there an expectation that they are implementing the recommendations, or that we're just reporting on whether we are or aren't? I mean, what's the teeth in the recommendation, if there are any?
Shelley, would you like to address that question?
Sure. And I see, I don't know if Jason has a question, but I know that this one's also really important to him. So for us, having that reporting is really important just generally to understand what's happening within agencies and how they're responding to these requests. We also found that the question 12 in the Chief FOIA Officer reports was a really strong area for awareness for FOIA professionals. And so even just having it there sent them toward learning more about what we're doing and reading through our recommendations. So I see it as kind of twofold, but I'd love to hear if anybody else from the subcommittee would want to weigh in also.
No, that's great information. Thank you.
I know Jason and Liz also have their hands up. I don't know who was first.
Liz was first.
Okay, thanks. Liz, go ahead, please.
My question is how this would intersect with the dashboard of recommendations and the status there. So if something is marked complete, would it be asked about, or would this would this just focus on recommendations that are deemed still open? Oh, sorry, Liz Hepowitz from American Oversight.
Thank you.
Well, can I take that on, Lena?
Yeah, that would be
Jason
wonderful.
Barron,
Thank you.
from University of Maryland. Liz, this is not a dashboard-related recommendation. Actually, your question is really focused on the next recommendation that we'll talk about, but where we're trying to improve sort of public understanding of dashboard recommendations. But this goes to OIP's CFO reports. This committee has tremendously valued what the Office of Information Policy has done over the years. There have been other recommendations going back several terms where OIP has essentially moved forward with questions to agencies about technology and about training and other subjects, where taking the ideas from this committee and incorporating them in some form in the CFO annual reports, the questions to agencies. Not this past cycle, but one cycle before, in the reports in the spring of 2025, there was a specific question 12 that was put to agencies based on a prior recommendation of this committee. And that question 12 generated more than 150 references to committee recommendations that agencies had been considering and, in many cases, implementing consistent with the recommendation. And so we noted that in our subcommittee report. And then we noted that in this latest round, in the 2026 CFO reports that have been published by OIP, there were only a few. There was no question 12 pointed directly to our advisory committee's recommendations. It was just left to agencies to, talk about whatever they wished in the question set. There were some optional questions, and only in a few instances were there references to the work of the FOIA Advisory Committee. So there was a tremendous drop-off. And I believe, and I think our subcommittee believed in putting forward this recommendation, that it would be extremely useful for OIP to tie in the work of this advisory committee directly, more expressly, into those annual reports. A lot of information was gained, and it's an informational exercise. We're not purporting to require any kind of implementation as such. That's a responsibility that, when the archivist approves recommendations, that OIP can consider whether to effectuate our recommendations. But the informational value of having something like question 12 continue in the future is just, in my view, incredibly valuable. And so that's what this recommendation is going to.
So it would be
very
more
helpful.
general. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I want to thank you both for their responses. Very helpful.
Liz, go ahead, please. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so it would be a more general kind of just pointing to all of the recommendations, rather than, rather than anything else. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Well, Liz, this is Jason Barrett. In a prior term, we actually gave OIP options, whether it was open-ended question 12 about all recommendations, or to focus as they wish on specific recommendations and requiring agencies to respond back. So it's really in OIP's discretion. I believe that a question 12 that is open-ended in general netted a tremendous response from agencies, and so I would be in favor of that. But I'm not. I don't believe that this committee should dictate or micromanage what Office of Information Policy does. This recommendation leaves open for them to go forward with a question that they can fashion in their own way.
Okay, thank you for all of those questions and answers. Any other hands? I'm looking. I don't see any other hands. Jason, Marianne, would one of you like to make a motion on the second recommendation?
I'll move for the committee to vote on approve a recommendation I2.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Marianne. I think I also had another second.
That was Nieva.
Nieva, thank you. We have 2 seconds, Dan. I hope you noted that. All right, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor of passing I2, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions?
Yes, I abstain.
Okay.
So the recommendation passes 15 with 1 abstention. 15-0 with 1 abstention.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I will pass it over to Frank.
Morning, everyone. Frank Lamani with CNN, representing news media requesters. Could we advance to recommendation I3, please? Thanks.
Frank, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'm sorry. I'll speak up and I'll get closer. Could we advance to recommendation I3, please? That should be the next slide. Thank you. Okay. One of the insights that emerged from the focus group process, having small group interactions with FOIA professionals, was that people working in the field found the existing collection of 67, now in excess of 70 after this term, recommendations to deal with on the NARA website, to be somewhat overwhelming and not the most user-friendly to navigate. In conjunction with conducting the focus group meetings, Deborah and Shelley went through the 67 recommendations and were pretty readily able to call out 20 of them that were specifically directed to agency professionals, as opposed to, say, Congress or OGIS or another actor, right? So 20 of the 67 were within the ability of agency FOIA professionals to act on and influence. And once they were presented with that 20, that seemed much more manageable and actionable to them. And so this recommendation builds on that experience with the focus group, encouraging OGIS to create a resource for agency use, presenting the past FOIA Advisory Committee recommendations in an easy to access manner. We have included in the draft report for the subcommittee a couple of tables that build on the work that implementation did last term, trying to categorize these in a way that makes them less overwhelming. And in anticipation of, I'll go ahead and answer Liz's question here. On the selection of 20 does not distinguish between ones that were marked completed or not completed on the existing taxonomy. If you look on the website, there are some recommendations marked as completed today. When completed really means substantial progress has been made toward completion, but that doesn't mean that there's not room for agencies to continue to improve and act upon them. One of them is an affirmative disclosure recommendation. And so while great progress was made, as noted in the on the website, there's room for agencies to continue acting on those, right? That's one that I think you could arguably say will never be fully completed. It will always be an ongoing recommendation. And so that one appears on the list of 20. So we intentionally tried to not be prescriptive about what this will look like and to leave flexibility for OGIS to apply their own creativity and skill to it. But the idea is to encourage greater adoption and utilization of these good recommendations.
Thanks, Frank. Any questions about I3? I don't see any hands. Just pause one more minute. Everyone is good. Okay, do I have a motion for I3 to be passed by the committee today?
Frank Lamonti, I'll move approval of recommendation I3.
Thank you, Frank. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jason. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? I'm going to go on the record. Alina is abstaining. Thank you.
So the motion passes 15-0 with one abstention.
Okay. We're moving along very briskly today. I love it. Okay, so anything else from the implementation subcommittee? Great work, everyone. Jason, Marianne, anything else?
No, thank you, Alina.
No,
Thanks
just
to
going to
everybody.
say thank you to our subcommittee. They've been absolutely wonderful. They've put so much work into all of this, and it's just been a joy, honestly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marianne. All right, so let's move on to the FOIA Statutory Reform Subcommittee. If Ryan Mulvey and Whitney Fraser Jenkins would like to have the floor, I'm going to hand the baton over to you.
Good morning. We have 3 recommendations to discuss. I anticipate there will be a lot of discussion regarding them. 2 of them, SR4 and SR5, we brought for discussion at the last committee meeting. So I will turn it over to Ryan to introduce the specific recommendations.
Thank you, Whitney. Ryan Mulvey, Americans for Prosperity Foundation.
And I'm
yes,
sorry, Ryan, to interrupt for 1 second. Did we go to the next slide? Just want to make sure we're on the correct slide.
We're on the cover slide for the Statutory Reform Subcommittee.
Okay, and I apologize for interrupting you. When you're ready to say next slide to talk about the first recommendation, just
no, that's quite all right. Next slide. We can jump right into it. As Whitney mentioned, 2 of these are you have seen before. In fact, one of them I think you've seen twice before, and this is the 3rd time that it's coming before you. Of the recommendations that have previously been discussed and shared with the full committee, there have been some modifications that were made in light of previous full committee discussions and discussions at the subcommittee working group levels and also cross working group. And in that respect, I'd like to thank Sean Glendenning at OIP and Jason Barron for engaging with Statutory Reform Subcommittee on trying to find ideal language that everybody can feel comfortable with. With SR4, the first of the three recommendations we have on the table today, I'd like to just highlight the changes that are reflected in the version that is posted in which you all have. And there are three things I think I'd like to highlight before opening the, oh no, we're still on the last one, opening the floor for discussion. The first is that we have in the actual bolded recommendation made no change. But we had previously made clear that while we were preferring the FOIA court be located in Article 3, that Article 1, if properly set up, such a tribunal could be a workable alternative to an Article 3 court. The explanatory language for the recommendation, however, still indicates a preference for an Article 3 court. The two other issues which were the point of major discussion last month are firstly whether or not the FOIA court should have jurisdiction to hear non-FOIA claims. We previously had language suggesting that records management statutes or other transparency related statutes, Congress could consider giving the FOIA court jurisdiction to hear claims arising from. We've now, in footnote 8, restricted that particular recommendation to Privacy Act claims, which I think makes a lot of sense, seeing as Privacy Act requests are often processed under FOIA, and there is a greater relation between the Privacy Act and the FOIA statute than there is between, say, FOIA and the Presidential Records Act or the Federal Records Act. So footnote 8 there is one major change. The other is 9. As you might recall, there was great discussion over whether or not the jurisdiction of a specialty court should be exclusive or concurrent, meaning whether if somebody brings a FOIA claim in a court, they'd have to go, no matter what, to the FOIA court to bring that claim, or whether they would still have the ability to bring it either under the current venue options that are in the FOIA statute, or to use the example that was discussed in the case of, say, a Presidential Records Act case that has a FOIA claim built in. Does that case have to go to FOIA court, or does the plaintiff have to bring two lawsuits? There's a lot of complexity in that, and there's been a lot of discussion. There are pros and cons to either approach. It's ultimately a policy call, and the working group that's behind this recommendation sought to take no position on that, but rather to highlight for Congress for its decision making, if it were ever to take up this recommendation, to highlight that this needs to be resolved, that it's a complex issue, and that either side, again, there are pros and cons to either approach. Our hope, though, is that by removing this from the explanatory language and not taking a position either way, we can accommodate as many views as possible, because, and this is something that I've shared with those who have been discussing this recommendation, we think that there is across the board support for the idea of having some sort of specialty tribunal that hears FOIA cases, and that there would be great benefit from having that sort of entity set up by Congress. So with that, I'll open the floor to any questions or comments or discussion.
Ryan, you were absolutely convincing. I see
Yeah.
no hands. Okay.
Oh, Jason has his hand up.
Jason, thank
You
you.
spoke too soon, Alina.
I know, I'm so sorry.
Ryan, I think you've done a great job and a service to the committee as a whole in taking everyone's competing views into account. I'm going to surprise everyone here and say that I have no substantive changes to propose. I think footnote 8 takes care of my concerns that the recommendation not foreclose, or the sense of the committee not foreclose having Presidential Records Act claims or constitutional claims that are married up in a complaint with a FOIA account being driven to the FOIA court. That was my concern. I wanted to keep open the possibility that when Congress considers this, that there would be either jurisdiction in a federal district court for those kind of combined counts or concurrent jurisdiction. You've summarized all of that very well. I will just add that I think this recommendation would get the overwhelming support of federal district court judges in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. That's a natural audience for this, given what we see happening. And I think it's a good recommendation going forward. So I appreciate the work, Ryan, that you and others on the Statutory Reform Committee have done in shaping this in a way that satisfies at least my concerns. I won't speak for everyone, but well done.
Thank you, Jason. This is Ryan again. And I want to also call out Dave Coulier because, one footnote that we did add here, which I didn't mention because it's not really substantive to the recommendation, but reflects some of the methodology here. Dave reached out to judges and the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, and this recommendation had been shared with them. And unsurprisingly, Jason, you are correct. The judges on the DDC and the Administrative Office, speaking on behalf of judges, was very supportive of the idea of moving most FOIA claims, at least pure FOIA cases, into off the dockets of the courts of general jurisdiction and into a more specialized expert court.
Great. Thank you, Dave. We really appreciate that. All right. Any other questions, comments on SR4? Okay, I don't see any. Dan, did I miss anyone? I don't think I did.
No, I don't see any hands up.
All right. Ryan and Whitney, do you want to go ahead and make a motion?
I will move that we adopt recommendation SR4.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
That was Ryan seconding. Thank you. All those in favor of SR4 recommendation, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, please say nay.
I abstained.
I haven't gotten to the abstentions yet.
Oh, okay,
Do I
great.
have any nays? Just want to
All
make sure I don't have any nays.
Okay, I didn't know if anyone was opposed. Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure.
I don't hear any nays. Anyone is abstaining? Mary Ann Manheim and Sean O'Neill. I
O'Neill.
2 abstentions.
2 abstentions.
Anyone
Oh.
else?
Okay, so this recommendation passes 14-0 with 2 abstentions.
Okay.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, SR5. This is what we ended last month's meeting on, as as folks were dropping like flies from the call. So, we have a fuller body here to discuss it today. I'll keep my comments brief since not much has changed. In fact, of the 3 parts here, reaffirming the de novo standard, specifying remedial authority with reading room claims. Those two have not been changed. There was some additional explanatory language on the third standing issue, kind of to reflect or respond to the conversation that and comments that were made at the last meeting. I will not. I'll leave it at that, and welcome discussion or questions on this proposal. Unless David or Margaret, you had anything you wanted to add before we do that.
I see them shaking their heads no.
Okay.
So just wanted to reflect that. Nieva, I see your hand up.
Yes, this is Nieva Brock, Department of War again. I just want to restate that my comment from the last meeting was that this doesn't seem to rise to the level of a congressional act to reaffirm, specify, and reinforce things. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted.
Margaret?
Yeah, I just wanted to reply to that, maybe specifically about number 2. The problem with number 2 is that only Congress actually can fix this because it is a question of statutory interpretation that the circuit courts are divided on. So there's a current disagreement about what the statute means. And I think by definition, as a result, only Congress can change the statute to resolve the ambiguity that the courts have decided exists in the language. So I wanted to, just because I've worked more on that one than the others, I wanted to weigh in specifically about that. In fact, I think there's literally no other way to resolve it other than a Supreme Court case that deems the statute to mean a certain thing. But we have not seen even cert petitions on this question. And right now, the circuits are divided. So this is exactly the kind of thing where if Congress has written a statute that has unintentionally introduced ambiguity, that Congress is the only actor positioned to solve it.
Margaret, thank you. That was Margaret Quokka from Ohio State University School of Law. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. Yes.
Okay.
That's me.
All right. Anyone else? I see Sean's hand is up. Sean O'Neill, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm going to abstain from this vote, but as to number 3 there, I'm not sure that's a real problem that needs solving right now. We're not seeing much of a trend in the courts on that front, so I just wanted to note that. Number 1, I think even if the statute didn't speak to the de novo standard, I think the courts would still be giving deference in a lot of areas such as national security because of separation of powers and other reasons. So I'm just not sure that there's a real fix here necessarily that can be made in the statute that would override some of that. So just wanted to note those couple of things.
Liz?
To Sean and Nieva's point, sorry, Liz Hepwitz from American Oversight, that it is not unusual for Congress to have to reaffirm what was meant by statute when the practice doesn't line up. The practice doesn't line up exactly with what was intended. To Sean's point about that deference, I think while unlikely to make it into the statutory text, there might be some useful legislative history if Congress were to take this up and really look at this issue with fresh eyes now. So.
All right, I see Jason's hand is up. Go ahead, Jason, please.
Jason Barron, University of Maryland. I'd like to compliment the group that drafted these. The drafting in the commentary to this is of the finest quality. It's law review like in nature. It shows how wonderful you all are in terms of being good lawyers. I think this is a curious set of recommendations because while I think they're harmless. I would say the word anodyne. It it seems be satisfying some set of issues that lawyers could love, but this committee, I sincerely doubt that anyone on this committee would have come into this term, other than the lawyers drafting this, but would come into this term thinking that any of these issues are serious systemic problems in FOIA administration of the type that virtually all of our other recommendations from this advisory committee have sought to make progress on. So we're asking agencies to implement various policies, and we're asking, different bodies, whether it's the Chief FOIA Officers Committee, to form a technology subcommittee to solve technology issues, or to go to SIGI with that recommendation. And yes, we've had statutory recommendations previously, including one from this term, ones that I think go to agency administration of the FOIA, resources and otherwise. These recommendations, particularly 2 and 3, seem to be the type of things that extremely esoteric intellectual law review articles can debate, and that are out there. I don't see them, and I support what Sean said, that I don't see the case being made that these are serious issues that affect the administration of FOIA throughout the government. And I agree, but this advisory committee has not really ever, to my knowledge, made recommendations on circuit splits, that we are trying to, in some certiorari business, act as a, kind of Supreme Court in shadow, trying to resolve circuit splits in FOIA law to have statutory changes. And so it is, in my view, these are all interesting proposals. And I would, if the way that I come out is that while I'm not going to vote against the recommendation, I think it would be a stronger recommendation if as a committee, we only adopt point 1, which is to reaffirm the statute's de novo standard, which I think we all do understand is an important foundation in the statute to give judicial review kind of a robustness and not be over-determined by how agencies come out, given whatever level of scrutiny they've had. So I like 1 more than 2 and 3 as a real-world issue that is appropriate for Congress to consider amending the FOIA statute on. And if this were just Congress should amend FOIA's judicial review provision to reaffirm the statute's de novo standard, I think everyone would get it on this committee, and the audience, the greater audience, would get it, as that that's a good thing for this committee to do. As for the others, my preference, again, I'm not going to object to it, but my recommendation or my suggestion is that the final report recognize that there's a circuit split, or that there's some cases out there that in the point of 3 that are requiring a heightened injury in fact standard that may not be appropriate, and that we essentially put it over, like we're putting over other kind of ideas like an AI or otherwise, to another term to see if there's a further development in the law. So that's where I come out, but I would need support on this committee, with others weighing in even beyond the comments we've heard, to perhaps carry the day on what I'm saying. And Ryan and others, feel free to push back on what I'm saying. We did get some support for my remarks also in public comments. Anyway, that's where I come out.
Jason, thank you. Ryan, go ahead, please.
I appreciate your feedback, Jason, and to your at least with number 3, to your point and to Sean's, I think we've always recognized that there has not been a huge shift in the case law, but there has certainly been discussion in cases. And again, I would point with reading room claims to Judge Rao's concurrence in the Campaign for Accountability case, that there is this disagreement among jurists about the impact of TransUnion on informational standing, which directly relates to FOIA. So there hasn't been a huge amount of case law, but at least from the requester community, it's a concerning thing to see line attorneys at DOJ try to move to dismiss FOIA cases for lack of standing because informational injury by itself, the procedural injury of not receiving a timely response, for example, isn't adequate. That being said, personally, if it would garner more support for the rest of the recommendation to remove 3 to report language, I could be accommodating on that, I think. I speak for myself there, not for the subcommittee or the working group. On number 2, I actually think that of the 3, this is the one that is most appropriate. I can think of maybe putting aside differences between courts of appeals on the standards of review not the de novo standard of review, but like the review of the lower court's opinion, what the review of a summary judgment decision might be. Setting that aside, like there are 3 big areas of splits in FOIA. B3 and whether the Open Government Act, the requirement to cite to the FOIA in a B3 statute is an entrenchment. Whether or not certain communications with Congress satisfied the B5 threshold. And then lastly, whether or not there's remedial authority or what is the nature of the remedial authority with reading room claims. Those are the 3. And I mean, this really goes to a split that gets to a very fundamental understanding of what the statute is supposed to say. So in that sense, even though there's not a lot of reading room cases, it really sticks out to me as something that is worthy of Congress's attention. I think that's why ACUS, which admittedly is a lot of law professors and admin law geeks, of course, but that's why they addressed it, and they had government and requesters come together to support exactly the same thing that we're proposing here. So, I mean, to me, 2 is the most important one here, to tell you the truth, in my mind.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Margaret, thank you for your patience. And I apologize if you had your hand up before Ryan's, but go ahead, please.
I did not. Thank you. Margaret Cuoco, Ohio State University, otherwise known as one of the people writing the esoteric law review articles. I appreciate your comments, Jason. And I did want to push back on a couple of sort of sub points there. Also, let me just say, I want to second and endorse all the things Ryan just said. And I actually think number 2 is also the most important of these. And I want to suggest, although not make a motion, because I think under Robert's rules that cuts off discussion, but that we potentially sever these for separate votes or in somehow something like that, just in the idea that perhaps some may garner more support than others. I do think number 2 is particularly both appropriate and important. On the appropriate prong, I would say I don't think that this converts us into a body that's trying to sit as a Supreme Court stand-in resolving circuit splits. This is not a constitutional question, right? And so this is not a question in which the Supreme Court is the ultimate authority on interpretation. In fact, the courts in this instance interpreting a statute are just trying to figure out what Congress meant. And so making a recommendation that Congress clarify what it meant by specifying that remedial authority, I think is completely appropriate. And it would be, I think, different perhaps if we were talking about some sort of constitutional question. But given that this is statutory interpretation, all that courts are trying to do in these instances is figure out what did the statute mean? What did Congress mean? And so we can recommend that Congress specify what it means. And I think to the extent that we have a statutory reform subcommittee, having recommendations that explain to Congress, or what areas where they can in fact clarify the statute in a way that is helpful to the administration of the statute is important. And the second thing I'll say, and I was actually going to bring up the ACUS point also. Yes, Ryan, there's a bunch of esoteric, admin law professor types. It's also half government members. So that recommendation passed overwhelmingly out of the Administrative Conference of the United States, which is a body of like 60 people, half of whom are sort of high level folks in agencies, including general counsels and whatnot of departments. And so this is the kind of recommendation that I think is entirely appropriate out of this body. And I do think that even if the number of cases are small, the impact is large. So for example, the Executive Office for Immigration Review now publishes the full corpus of decisions out of the Board of Immigration Appeals, which because of reading room litigation, and that has been transformative in terms of immigration practice, is my understanding from immigration lawyers, having access to those decisions, which are, orders or opinions of an agency under A2, and, should have been, it seems, published all along. And so even if the number of cases is small, the effect can be quite big on FOIA administration and on transparency and on the public's access to some of the most important government documents, which are the documents that embody agency decisions that affect members of the public. And so I just wanted to highlight that I think number 2 is entirely within our competency, is not merely of interest to law professors, but in fact to the FOIA community and also the community of constituencies across agencies that need access to government records. And that there is nothing, in fact, the right place for us to intervene is to make a recommendation to Congress. So maybe we could sever these and maybe we still won't come to agreement, but I'm going to put that out there for perhaps the subcommittee co-chairs to consider how to proceed on a vote when we get to that point in this discussion.
Thanks, Margaret. Jason has his hand up again. Go ahead, Jason, please.
Margaret, this is Jason Barron, University of Maryland. Margaret, you've made a very persuasive case. So is Ryan, in pointing out issues that are of importance with respect to the second recommendation. What I would say is that the points that you've made just now supplement, complement, amplify on the commentary to this recommendation that was in the subcommittee report. And so, assuming this passes, at least the second recommendation, whatever, I would really urge the final report of this advisory committee to incorporate, look at the transcript of what's just occurred in this meeting and incorporate some of that, because ultimately I still stick on my meta point that this committee, through several terms, there have been noted that we have lots and lots of recommendations. And there's an implementation subcommittee because, well, there's concern about the implementation of 70 plus recommendations. And my concern is that these points, with all of your points well taken, still, I think, end up adding to a forest of recommendations, and particularly in this batch that the archivist, if confirmed, or the acting archivist is going to have to decide on. So we need to bring our best arguments in the final report in support of why these are important. And I'll leave it there. I guess where I now come out is that we could sever this. I would recommend that points 1 and 2, the sub recommendations 1 and 2, be carried forward with this. And with respect to the third recommendation, that we can note it in our final report, but not as a recommendation. So that we adopt 1 and 2, and that we say, with respect to whatever concerns we have, there's an emerging case law that we need to recognize and perhaps opine on in a recommendation for next term. That's where I come out. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jason. I'm just going to comment as chairperson. We have never had this happen before. Margaret, thank you for raising new issues. Fun ride here of splitting up recommendations, a recommendation rather, into subparts and voting on them separately. I've asked our ADFOs if there's anything in FACA that prevents us from doing that. Dan, Kimberly, would you be able to speak to that?
Well, I've just reviewed the bullet points of FACA. I don't believe there's anything that would prevent us. I've also reviewed the charter and the bylaws, and I believe both of those are silent on this issue. So there doesn't seem to be anything preventing us from doing that.
Okay.
I concur with Dan, Alina. I'm not seeing anything either.
Okay.
So it's up to the committee how they'd like to proceed.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dan and Kimberly. Jason, you have your hand up again. Go ahead, please.
Well, Jason Barron, I don't want a law of unintended consequences here. There's been very good work on the subcommittee's part and the drafters of all 3 of these. That's what I started with. I would wish that there not be a vote that's a negative vote with respect to any of these. That is, that it could be overinterpreted as somehow that the committee didn't think that they were worthy of even discussion, or that they were bad ideas to be objected to. What I would like to propose is that it's 11:17, that we take a break, and this may violate a FACA rule, so we need a designator. I was going to suggest that the drafters from the subcommittee have a conversation about whether to withdraw number 3 and just have a vote on number 1 and 2. Anyway, but I will withdraw that if that's not appropriate for the overall public meeting to have that kind of conversation. We have those conversations as subcommittee members. I will defer to Alina and our designated representative on that. I just think that it would be, the severability is okay. I would like to counter with that and just have a proposal that we adopt the sense of this recommendation for 1 and 2, and that with that language included, and that would get a positive vote from the committee with simply the language of 1 and 2 in a recommendation, and that the sense of the committee would then be, without a vote, that the third recommendation be incorporated into a final report.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Margaret, go ahead, please.
I've been trying to read the tea leaves of this conversation amongst those of us who worked on this also, and Jason, your comments. And actually, I suspect that the working group that put this forward, at least, I can't speak for the subcommittee necessarily, but that we could one way to do this would be potentially to entertain a motion to amend, Jason, if you wanted to make a motion to amend. And maybe that motion could be a motion to amend to remove paragraph 3 from this bolded text, and instead incorporate that into the final report as an issue for future study. And I don't know if I think we would probably have to vote on that motion to amend, or because I don't think it's quite trivial enough to be a friendly amendment, or maybe we could accept it as a friendly amendment and then vote that. And I would be happy to support that or second that motion.
We have, just for the record, I mean, in past terms, we have edited the language of recommendations without a formal motion. But I
Right.
but I think that that is an alternative mechanism, and I would make that motion if Alina wished me to do so.
Well, it's not just up to me. I really want to defer to Ryan and Whitney. But I think everyone feels like they need a comfort break, and it will give us an opportunity to mull things over. So if we could take about a 10-minute break and come back at 11:30, I think that would be very helpful. If the working group wants to stay on and chat about this for a minute, they don't need the DFO or a DFO to be on. So I'll leave that up to everyone.
I would suggest that the working group not use this forum, since this forum will be public
Right,
or could potentially be public.
right. Perhaps you could email each other separately as to how you want to proceed. So let's take a 10-minute break. We will come back at 11:30. That's sound good to everyone? Okay. Don't turn off the video. Just turn off your video camera icon and microphone icon. If we could go to the next slide. Okay, Whitney's back. Jason's back, thank you. Sean is back, thank you. I think we've got everyone, right, Dan?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we do. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. Lively discussion going on today. And I'm going to ask Ryan in particular, but Ryan and Whitney as subcommittee co-chairs, what your preference is about how you want to drive forward with this particular recommendation.
This is Ryan. Whitney and I and the rest of the working group that drafted this recommendation have consulted, and I think we're agreed that the best approach would be, rather than voting to sever and then voting separately, we can just amend as a group, as we've done in the past with recommendations and explanatory language. The idea being to move 3 to the subcommittee report and ultimately the final report as an issue of interest and further study for subsequent terms.
Okay, that sounds.
So get the red marker out and.
Yep. Dan, are you able to do that on screen? Oh, here he is. He's already prepared. Thank you. So we're going to strike 3. And Frank and Shelley and Sarah, we have a lot of work to do on the future considerations section of the final report, right?
Noted.
Yeah.
On that point, I would as a separate note, because for the folks at home and also the members who have looked at the OGIS website and the meeting materials, Whitney and I, the report from our subcommittee is not complete only because we were waiting to see how these 3 recommendations would go. So our report will be finalized in short order. But I just wanted to throw that in there. Also, we need to change in 2 ways before the colon at the top here.
Right.
And the semicolon and the word "and" should come out for a period.
Yeah, and moved up, I guess, to the
after standard.
Yeah. This would, I guess, the last, it's not on the screen here, but this amendment would also mean taking the last page, roughly, bottom of page 3 and all of page 4 from the full recommendation with explanatory language would be cut and paste into the report.
Well, Ryan, that's
into our subcommittee report, and then what the final report. Yes.
Yeah, into your subcommittee report.
Yes.
Hey, Dan, can you please add "and" after the standard in line for number 1?
For standard. Yep. Oh, and.
Yes, please. Thank you. All right. Does that seem okay to you, Ryan and Whitney, as subcommittee co-chairs?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thanks for resolving that very quickly. I really appreciate that. Are we ready to vote on SR5? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, so
I second.
Thank you, Margaret. Just so we're all clear, we're voting on what is up on the screen currently, the SR5 version, not the version that was circulated earlier. All those in favor of this version we have up on the screen currently, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed, please say nay. Okay, any abstentions?
Nieva
I abstain.
abstains.
I abstain.
Okay, so there are several abstentions. Let's make sure we note those.
I heard Nieva abstaining.
Yes.
Sean previously confirmed that he would abstain. Is that correct, Sean?
Right.
And then I heard several others, but all together.
Yeah.
This is Whitney from PBGC. I'm abstaining.
Okay.
And Alina is abstaining.
Scott Hodis, USCIS, abstains.
Okay, Whitney and Scott. So Nieva abstains, Whitney abstains, Sean abstains, Scott abstains, and Alina abstains. 5 abstentions and 11 yeses. So the motion carries 11-0 with 5 abstentions.
Okay.
This is Ryan. I'll turn it over to Dave for unless Whitney, you had anything you wanted to mention before we turn it over to Dave for the last one.
No, turn it over to Dave.
And before Dave starts, Dan, can you turn off your screen, stop sharing? That would be helpful.
I can try.
Okay, that would be great. Dave, over to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, Dave Coulier, University of Florida. Thank you all. This has been a pleasure this past 2 years. I love it. And so I think this is the last recommendation we're doing today, yes? Awesome.
Yes.
Correct.
Well, 4 years ago, we had a recommendation on the committee to have the archivist, Nara, commission a study to look at pros and cons, costs and benefits of new systems for assisting the FOIA process. Specifically, we're talking about new actions with appropriate funding for OGIS to deal with disputes, make binding recommendations, various other elements that were approved in the recommendation. And all of those depended on studying it, to see if it would be good or not. Well, I think OGIS and NARA, they've worked hard to try to find the funding for that study, but it hasn't come about. And no surprise given the budgets and federal agencies today. So we came back at it this term with another recommendation, building on it in 3 important ways. One is we make it clear Congress should appropriate the funding for this study. If Congress wants to pass an unfunded mandate of FOIA, and it really believes in it, and we believe most members of Congress do, we hope, that they should put up the money to figure out how to make it work better. And so we shouldn't put it on the archivist to come up with the $1 million or whatever it would cost to do such a study, feasibility study. So that's really important. Number 2, we make it clear that that to leave it open on who does the study. It doesn't have to be OGIS or NARA. It could be ACUS, OMB, an outside entity, whatever Congress wants. And we also, number 3, leave it wide open on the different types of structures they might want to study. So not just giving OGIS additional powers, but it could include creating a whole new entity. We heard pros and cons to that this term. It could include giving duties to OGIS. It could include reinforcing and funding better all the entities that currently do a lot of this, whether it's GSA, OMB, GAO, OIP, OGIS, et cetera, et cetera. So really, that's all this is shoot, Congress, please step up, put the money forward to see what we can do about coming up with a better way of making things work for the process. And a lot of the ideas are driven by research that's been conducted in the past 4 years by Margaret Quokka, her detailed examination, hanging out in Mexico City 9 months, studying their processes, not to mention 80 other countries that have alternative ways of dealing with FOIA, and the states as well. So we think there's a lot we could learn from that, and we would really love it if Congress would step up and figure out what might make sense. And we don't know what that might look like ultimately, but we got to start somewhere. That, I think, is the recommendation. Margaret, Ryan, anybody else? Margaret, probably, did you want to add anything?
Thanks, Dave. Margaret Quokka, Ohio State. I will add just that we have done we've gone through a lot of iterations of this recommendation, and in sort of some of them, we considered sort of simply making the recommendation about how to sort of consolidate and augment the functions that we are talking about. And I just want to highlight that these are mostly sort of oversight type functions. So this is, and many of which are being done in some form or another somewhere, right? But not done sort of to the level or systemic capacity that we want. And we think there's value to considering consolidation and augmenting those functions. So, for example, having, like studying the feasibility of endowing an entity like OGIS or something else with the capacity to host a single system platform, both for users and backend for agencies, technologically for FOIA administration across the federal government. That requires, I think, more information than we are able to gather about the costs and technical barriers and whatnot. And that's why a study about that is so important. It includes, auditing functions, which are currently sort of like, OGIS does some things that look like they're not audits, they're assessments. Sorry, Alina, there's a different word, something like that. Yeah, okay. But then like GAO does audits, right? And like inspectors general might do it. We have parts of government that are doing something that looks like, I'm going to use the word audit very loosely, not like necessarily an audit, but like something like an audit, but not a systemic way of doing that kind of work over FOIA operations. And so it's sort of piecing together these various functions and thinking about, a study that can really look at, what makes sense as a holistic question, not just taking piece by piece. It would be great to have more auditing or a better portal or a whatever, right? And so kind of figuring that out. And I'll say, it was the research that I did that Dave is referencing on a Fulbright grant in Mexico was of a system that has now, in fact, been constitutionally abolished, unfortunately, in Mexico as part of a huge constitutional set of reforms that affected a lot of different government functions and reduced the sort of independence of some independent bodies and also the judiciary. So there's like lots going on in there. And I think was not an indictment of how well the system was working, but was rather sort of a shift in the political winds about, larger political trends. So as that system relied on basically a commission style system, and it was one of the stronger commission models in the world. A commission, an information commission, is usually sort of the generic term used for sort of a independent or quasi-independent body that has the sorts of oversight functions that will include, administrative appeal adjudication, usually, that will include hosting a portal, that will include auditing, that will include, promoting sort of public information, public education, even doing school curricula, advertising, providing services to requesters, right? Sort of a whole host. It's sort of like a full 360 roundabout set of wraparound kind of FOIA vision. And so the question is really just how, whether and how some sort of reimagining of consolidating and augmenting those types of functions, and which ones they are, would be included or not included, we're not prejudging. Where it would be housed, we're not prejudging. Whether these are feasible in our own structure, we're not prejudging. Like in my own work, I have suggestions about that. Other people have suggestions about that in their work. We're not prejudging which of these ideas is right, but just to say that, frankly, a lot of this sort of depends on figuring out what things will cost and how we can do them and how it works best given our environment. And that's what the study is meant to do. So that was a long-winded way of augmenting and probably just reiterating everything that Dave said much shorter and clearer than I did. So thanks for giving me a minute.
No, well said. That had to be said, Margaret. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all of that, Margaret. I appreciate it. And Dave, thank you. I'm looking for any hands, any questions or comments from the rest of the committee. I'm not seeing any. Do you all think we're ready to vote on this?
Jason has his hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I feel an obligation, Jason Barron, University of Maryland. I feel an obligation to compliment the work here that's been done, to acknowledge it. And I understand from Margaret and David that you're not taking a position as such, leaving all possibilities, whatever, all options open as to what a feasibility study would end up recommending. But could you discuss for a moment what possibilities exist in your mind for what this study might end up recommending? Are you suggesting that functions performed by OIP be segregated out? Functions from OGIS, or I read this as OGIS could be eliminated in favor of some new independent information office. Tell us what possibilities exist that would end up being in a different universe than the one that we exist in now for FOIA administration.
Thank you, Jason, for that, Dave Coulier. And Margaret, I bet you'll want to chime in on this one. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of ideas. I think Margaret does what we've looked at around the country and world. But the more I've looked at this, the more I realize, I'd like to see a study, really dig in and see what it ends up with. I don't know what the outcome would be, but I think it needs to be. I mean, look, OGIS has been around, what, 15 years? Something like that. 17 years? And
yes.
Yeah, and it's a great agency. And we note in the report that its budget is flatlined that whole time, but yet its workload is increased exponentially. I mean, it's just, so I think it's a good time to take a look and take stock of how this is all working and see if there's a way of tweaking it or completely revamping it. I think we can learn from a lot of others and see maybe there's a better way of doing this. I think having some entity that has some independence is helpful from the executive branch, but some freedom to be able to provide advice and to agencies, but also to help agencies, help them with their technology. I think it's wrong that we leave it up to agencies to find the platform that'll work for them that may or may not work well, to pay for it, to maintain it, and then you have all these different agencies doing different things. It just seems like there could be better ways, and so I'm hopeful that a deep dive look could really flesh that out within the context of the U.S. federal government, which is unique compared to other, entities in the world. Margaret, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, thanks. Margaret Coco, Ohio State. Yeah, I can tell you, Jason, a little bit about my dream, if to the extent that's helpful. But I think, one thing is, I think, from my perspective, endowing OGIS with more authority, but not alone authority and resources that go with that authority, is the most important part of that, is the preferable route. I understand. I don't want to speak for anybody else. My understand, it seems like I haven't gotten the sense that OGIS is eager for a reform that looks like that necessarily right now. I don't know how much of that is sort of resource constraints and how much of it is other things. There's some sort of positional things. the reason that I think creating a new body is going to be a heavy lift is I think politically that's a heavy lift right now to create any new administrative body. Second, protecting the independence of independent agencies right now is, something that is being hotly litigated in the courts. And I would say independence is hard to come by. And frankly, the archives, while it doesn't have the formal sort of independence markers that some so-called independent agencies have, acts quite independently in most instances, like is a strong voice in terms of its mission that is, sort of independent of politics in most instances, I think. And so, it doesn't seem like an inappropriate spot to me. But the ways in which it would differ would be sort of, an order of magnitude in terms of resources, because the responsibilities, in my view, could be an order of magnitude bigger, very profitably. I think OGIS is doing amazing work, and augmenting it would be my preference if we're talking about, me alone. And so, one way to do that, I think, like, here are some of the things that could happen, right? So when I say one single FOIA portal, I think sometimes it sounds like trivial, like, okay, there will be like a website, like all you want is like a new website where people can submit requests. But actually the way I've seen this work, and this is not just Mexico, there's other countries that do this too, is that these portals act as the backend infrastructure for the agencies to track and process, to refer and manage, to queue up and know deadlines for, right, and to keep a permanent, a record of everything that happened, vis-a-vis the requester. So, for example, within an agency, the single portal system that a requester can go and request to anywhere, and it will get sent off, and they can log in and see all the requests they've made and all the deadlines and all of their communications that's happened and all of the releases, et cetera. But on the back end, the agency personnel can say, oh, like the FOIA office at a particular agency could say, oh, this is actually, these records would be in this program office, and they could use that portal to refer the request to a program office and give them an internal deadline to get back with responsive records so that they could then process that in the FOIA office. It could be potentially used to refer requests between agencies. It would keep a record, and then when you had an appeal or litigation, the full record would be available of all the communications between the requester and the agency. An OGIS-like entity or its equivalent, or its independent and new entity that we're talking about, whatever it is, could take administrative appeals instead of those going up to the agencies. So administrative appeals could go to them, for example, and that full record would be there, and they could have an adjudicative function, obviously to be appealed to court if they don't like it. But more than that, I think they could also do things like, training of not just FOIA office personnel, but all government employees who have touch points on the FOIA process. Part of promoting the responsibility of FOIA as something of all government employees and not just FOIA officers. I think that would be an option. Public education, I think, promoting the use of the statute. I saw these kinds of entities advertising at public festivals and on the sides of buses and sort of explaining, you have transparency rights. This is how you can get access to information. So, it's sort of like the world is your oyster, and we've tried to list some of the possibilities in the explanatory text of what could be looked at. But I think it is time to think about, and I think, one thing that I really was struck by is just, there are a lot of models out there. And of course, there's good work being done in folks who know what's happening around the world and in the state level. But I think sometimes Congress is myopic about well, we've always done it this way and we were the first and this model has been exported around the world. It doesn't mean that we haven't innovated beyond that, and they could take on some of these issues and figure out, can we find a model that would work here like that?
Thank you, Margaret. I see a couple of different hands up. I see Nick and Jason. I'm not sure who was first. Do you want to
Let Nick go.
Okay, Nick, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Jason. No, I really like Margaret's comment, and I think this proposal, because somebody who's been in the trenches, I still think moving data down Pennsylvania Avenue is very challenging, and especially as we get into video and other complex solutions, it's only going to get more complex. I think the challenge also becomes agencies cyber protection profiles and shared services. But I think we've private side has been doing this. So in addition to Margaret's great study, this is obviously something we can do to make it easier, whether it's a referral, or if it's a congressional oversight, or if it's a privacy request. It's the same piece of information, but moving it down the agency to Congress to requesters become increasingly hard with systems biased in siloed fashions that sometimes are proprietary and don't talk to one another. So anything I think will give some type of intermediary as well as give the agency choice about what they need, but just to have that connected tissue among the data would be, I think, a huge win.
Okay. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. Jason, go ahead, please.
I really appreciate Jason Barron. I really appreciate the further commentaries, explanations, discussion in response to my prior question. I am not going to be. I hate to be a gadfly, and on this committee, and I really would be delighted if others who haven't spoken or who have, but to go and tell us what you believe this recommendation may or may not do to improve or disrupt the current administration of FOIA. It seems to me that this is a Christmas tree wish list. It's not just a feasibility study that is limited to OGIS or to some aspects of FOIA administration, but it really goes to everything. It's sort of an everything is possible in the future, including the elimination of OGIS and the separation of functions of OIP in its current form. And it has a lot of great ideas in the commentary, but I would have wished for, again, I'm not, nobody is going to like this comment, but I really would have wished for this recommendation, as well thought out as it is, to have been put forward to the committee a year ago or 6 months ago or 3 meetings ago, whatever, to have a private set of discussions among subcommittees as well as a public discussion about the great ideas that are in here and the dangers in terms of disruption of the current system in terms of all options being presented. I think it's a bit of a Trojan horse. I've used different metaphors here. It's a all-encompassing ticket for Congress to do lots of things to the current system that, in terms of recommendations and ultimately, statutory revisions that may or may not be ones that are acceptable to some members of this committee or the larger FOIA community. And so it's a little like having a feasibility study for a constitutional convention to change the U.S. Constitution, and we don't know what 50 amendments would be proposed. And so I appreciate the work that's been done, but given that it's being presented today with not really kind of robust discussion of what's the devil in the details in the commentary that goes to what it is that Congress might be doing, I'm a little uncomfortable with suggesting such a broad-based, having a broad-based recommendation that would lead to the possibility of OGIS and OIB being transformed into some other entity. And I assume that both components will abstain, but I can't speak for Alina and Sean. I just don't know what to make of something that is potentially much more than a feasibility study. It seems to me like a roving commission to change everything we know about FOIA administration in the United States in favor of some other international model or otherwise. And again, there are lots of good ideas here, but it is not something that is narrowly tailored in the way that we're proposing it. We're giving an open slate to whoever's running that entity that comes out of this, the feasibility study assigned to some committee, some ad hoc task force with maybe some of us on some advisory group or whatever. I don't know what the future would hold for this recommendation coming forward. It sounds like a feasibility study, but it's really not narrowly tailored as such. And so I appreciate the opportunity to make my comments here. I would be really interested in what others have to say about what this recommendation means to you in terms of FOIA administration at your agency.
Anyone want to comment on that gauntlet having been thrown down by Mr. Barron?
Mary Ann Manheim, I have my hand up.
Sorry. Thank you.
I am from NIH, and I will just give some of the feedback I've had before thinking about this and thinking about it now. And yeah, it's the deconstructing of this and the road here that we've been on that makes me question how vast this actually is, as Jason has described. I mean, just thinking about where we go to, again, recommendation after recommendation, improve funding and supplying support to OGIS, continue to do this. This is where this kind of started, and this is a never-ending thing. And then I also, from an agency standpoint, have real concerns in some way with first looking at every country, which is not our own, which have very different systems, even though they might have very good things and pieces that you take out of there that are important that we should be looking at, but trying to apply that to us. I mean, I was even emailing with Margaret the other day because I was just like, your example actually got tossed away, like the Mexico, like it might have been good, but it's not even there. So there's that. So it was just like one of those moments, like the footnote actually was like, wait, are we going to try to do that? So there was some of that when I was looking at it. And yet all of these countries do have different sizes, different ways of looking at things. And when we're using the words like better, this is better, it's different, but we're different. So some of that, again, we should all be trying to improve. That's why we're here at this committee. But on the IT front, our agencies are also quite different and have different IT needs. So it isn't as simple, just like we can go through this whole feasibility study, and then you're going to talk to different agencies and you're going to come back to that again. And so we do need better technology, but we might not need all the same thing. And again, maybe you want a feasibility study to figure that one out. But I do think that this is very large, where the real issue is, to me, OGIS still needs more support to get through their mission, which would cover a lot of what we're trying to do here.
Thank you, Marianne. Ryan, go ahead, please.
Ryan Mulvey, AFP Foundation. I mean, I think on that last point, Marianne, we could point to the number of the number of past recommendations which are mentioned in this recommendation that have been made with respect particularly to OGIS. I actually, to push back slightly on Jason, on your point, which I think is fair. On pages 4 and 5, and maybe this can be, the explanatory language can be clarified a little bit. I think the idea is that the entity that is conducting this feasibility study is supposed to focus on the previous recommendations and then these 7 topics, which were if you look back at last month's version of SR6, where the 7 proposed reforms to OGIS or another entity, I think was the phrasing that we had. And they were 7 things that in our discussions with multiple stakeholders and members of this committee, government side included, I think people thought were valuable to think about. So the idea of having, FOIA.gov as a redirection website, working towards having, an actual proper portal that functions government-wide is a worthwhile goal, and something that needs further study. I think also, just as a general point, the one thing I appreciate here, even though I will tell you, on the working group, Margaret, Dave, and I don't agree on everything. Like, we disagree about independence and the some of the issues that come up with trying to move certain agencies that isolate them from the executive. There's disagreements there. What is so nice about, I think, the current drafting here is that this idea is about empowering Congress. So note that this isn't Congress give OGIS money to do a study. This is Congress, you need to have your own subject matter expertise. Congress, you need to go out and study what's going on. And you need to have your own data points, as it were, for approaching FOIA reform. And I think that's a valuable thing to kind of push for Congress to undertake. If nobody else is getting that impression that that's the purpose of this, maybe there can be some massaging of the explanatory language again. But in my mind, that's what I think what we were going for. And I think that's, again, an important thing to help empower Congress to be making, to have the knowledge at its fingertips for undertaking FOIA reform. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Any other thoughts or comments or responses to what Ryan just said? Dave and Margaret, anything else you wanted to add?
Margaret, did you have any? Go ahead, Margaret.
Margaret Coco, Ohio State. Yeah, I'll just briefly say, I mean, I think I want to underscore Ryan's point that, this recommendation originally was, in fact, to endow OGIS with the authority to do those 7 things and the concomitant funding to do them. And we eventually, and I think there was, I think there was some support for the idea that we should just make an affirmative recommendation about what should be done, that those 7 areas should be given to OGIS as points of authority and funded concomitantly. Over discussions, we were convinced that, that there was enough divergence of opinion about exactly where and how and which of these things were the right things to do, that further study would be of benefit. And this body has already made a recommendation for a feasibility study 4 years ago, as Dave mentioned. And so now that recommendation, of course, was not directed at Congress. That's why this is different. It's not the same recommendation. But I don't, just because we all can imagine things or pull research from everywhere, it doesn't mean I think that this is absolutely a free-for-all. I think this is a recommendation that Congress commissioned the study that we previously recommended, and that it addressed these 7 areas in particular, because those were the ones that, our original conception was simply to make the recommendation that Congress actually legislate those 7 things. And instead of doing that, we're making the recommendation that Congress study these 7 things. And so I don't think it's, I don't think this is a huge sort of, potential power grab or unintended consequences. I think this is Dave's amazing work 2 terms ago. I think this is the natural culmination of that, is to, now that we've been unable to get the feasibility study done and funded any other way, to go straight to Congress to ask for it. So I think this is a completely appropriate and logical next step from there, and one that we worked, I don't know what OGIS position is on it. I'm not going to say they support it, but we worked very closely with OGIS staff in talking about how to approach this. because of concerns about simply moving forward with a substantive recommendation about endowing this authority.
Yeah, I think you're right. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alina.
No. Go ahead, David.
Well, I was going to ask Alina, I don't know, would you want to make any comments about this? I mean, we heard you out, we heard OGIS out, we conferred, and I think we modified the ultimate recommendation to fit with what you all were thinking. I don't know. Did you want to comment on that or?
Sure. And yes, I agree with Margaret and Dave. Thank you. Both of you have been very accommodating, as has Ryan. So I do want to thank you on behalf of OGIS for that. We did vote in favor of a feasibility study in the term that it was proposed, and OGIS did make a number of efforts to try to get funding. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful. We kept getting turned down, and we felt a little frustrated with that. Because we just weren't able to make that recommendation come to fruition. So this was born in part out of that discussion and informed by that experience, I would argue. And I do very much appreciate the working group's willingness to consider OGIS's concerns and comments. And to us, this seemed like, as Ryan said, the best way to approach this, which is to put the onus on Congress to actually try to conduct the study, as opposed to putting the onus on us, because we did not do so well in trying to do it on our own. And we are hopeful that Congress can have better success. And certainly they can, they certainly have the ability to allocate the funds to themselves to conduct the feasibility study. So that's where we're generally coming out on that.
Thank you for that, Alina. Dave Coulier again. So yeah, I mean, this has taken different forms. I think we talked about, and we ended up with this because, this is just taking the next step. It's just let's figure this out. And Jason, I totally understand. It's always makes me nervous when you hand something to a legislature or Congress and open that door. Who knows what you're going to end up getting in the end? So yeah, that worries me a lot. But if we're all involved, hopefully, in watching that and helping guide in some way, hopefully they'll do a good job. They could do a study and nothing could happen. I mean, who knows? But it's the next step. And I think that's what's important here is we got to keep moving the ball forward, because if we don't, it just dies and we keep doing the same thing over and over and over, and without really taking a look at what's possible. And I don't know. I just think it's a pretty simple recommendation with a little downside, but hopefully can move things forward. But I could be wrong. Jason.
Anyone else?
No, I think you're the only one with a hand up.
Well, I'll continue to lobby for others to weigh in. Here's my suggestion. When I read the commentary, I thought it was going beyond, David, what was simply recommended for reimagining OGIS. And if it's cabined in a way that reflects the wonderful work that you've done previously in prior terms to sort of flesh out, the possibilities within government, if OIP is not objecting and OGIS is not objecting on the record, then who am I to object? I mean, feasibility studies are good. I wish NARA had implemented your prior proposals. I guess where I come out on this one is similar to where I came out on previously on another recommendation, which is that the final report not be too ambitious in its commentary. The commentary here has been so well done in terms of fleshing out. You said, David, that this is a simple proposal. Well, it is a simple proposal that we're looking at on the screen, but the commentary goes well beyond the 7 points that essentially are said. And in addition, Congress can look at these 7 points. It isn't central to the commentary. The commentary, in its prefatory remarks, opens up the possibility of real structural reform in ways that I don't think have been discussed by this advisory committee. And of course, depending on the staffing of any feasibility study in the future, it might go in one direction or another. And so I would suggest, and it's only, my suggestion, the final report drafting committee can do what they wish. I would suggest that the commentary on this be conformed and perhaps made more of a modest effort than what, to me, is suggesting is, an all things considered, including OIP and OGIS being transformed recommendation. So I would put the burden on the final reporting committee final report committee, and then of course we could have that discussion next month as to that. But in my experience on this advisory committee, final reports are voted up or down without serious discussion of editing line by line, and so there's that. Maybe a suggestion that the final report committee send around a draft of whatever comment accompanies this recommendation to the 3 subcommittees to have another look at in a forum that's not the final public meeting. These are all suggestions on my part. They're not motions and they're not recommendations. I respect the work. I especially respect the work, David, that you've done previously and now here. But I think it's something that has not been fully considered by this advisory committee in a way where every person on the advisory committee is reading the commentary and commenting publicly on it in a forum like this, in this public meeting. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Anyone else? Okay, I don't see any hands up. What does the subcommittee want to do with this recommendation? Would you like to move forward to a vote? Ryan, sorry, go ahead. Thank
Ryan, you. AFP Foundation. Procedurally, this is going to, I'm re-raising an issue that a couple months ago, I think in March we had discussed, or in April, just so I fully understand. We are voting on what is on the screen. So the subcommittee in its, in the coming week, when we approve our report, it is within our purview to adjust the explanatory language, correct?
You're suggesting based on Jason's feedback you got today.
Well, I'm a little confused because with respect, Jason, I know your position was that the bolded stuff is what's on our screen is the recommendation, but previously you had mentioned the explanatory language contained in what was posted for the committee's consideration when a vote is taken on the recommendation was influential or somehow relevant to a proper understanding of the recommendation, which is why we had previously adjusted or agreed conditionally to adjust language, as I recall, before moving to a vote. If we choose to vote affirmatively on this, if it passes, like, are you asking that it be passed with a stipulation that there be a rework of the explanatory language? I guess I'm trying to understand exactly procedurally how we would be proceeding here.
Ryan, it's Jason. Well, my comments are just my comments. They're not formal in any way, and I'm not asking the committee to do anything other than hear what I'm having to say. And of course, it's part of the transcript. So that I was confused about the subcommittee not having a final report versus a final report. But a final report of the entire committee. What I'm suggesting is that the final report of the entire committee, those drafters take a look at the commentary that comes out of the subcommittee and perhaps conform it to not having such open-ended language coming out of the final report as part of the commentary. So, Ryan, our tradition here is to vote on bold print recommendations, and subcommittees put forth commentaries, and then those commentaries are usually abridged in the final report. Otherwise, the final report would sometimes reflect 100 pages. So certainly when I have taken a lead responsibility to be editor of two past final reports, I never thought I was bound by the wording of a subcommittee's commentary, and my fellow colleagues on the final report, we do our best to reflect what it is that the subcommittees have said, but we're not bound by the wording of a commentary. We're only bound by the vote of the bold print recommendation.
This is Alina. I just want to add to Jason's comment. Certainly, Ryan, it's within the purview of the subcommittee to either modify its commentary or leave it the way it is when you pull together your final subcommittee report. That's certainly your prerogative.
And because I haven't been clear enough, because this is just sort of, ad hoc extemporaneous remarks, I'm happy, Ryan, and everybody to have a further conversation because it's certainly fair to ask me what I'm objecting to in terms of the prefatory remarks to the 7 points. And I think there's some language that, if I had the chance to weigh in, I'd, do some redlining or whatever. But I'm not fundamentally objecting to this. I'm just posing the question to the full committee and wishing to hear everybody on the committee talking in a public meeting about what they think about the proposal. That may be a wish that will go unfulfilled.
Well, I'm not seeing any hands, Jason.
Margaret has her hand up.
Oh, good. Margaret, go ahead, please.
Margaret Cuoco, Ohio State. I am not a new voice, Jason, so I am not, in fact, fulfilling your wish to have more voices added to this conversation. But I will say, I think that first off, I want to say I personally welcome your actual red line types of thoughts about the commentary. I think it would be helpful. And I think I suspect all of us who worked on this would be very open to discussing how we can make the commentary clearer about the intent, because I think to the extent that we're having a discussion that has clarified anything, obviously we would prefer those clarifications to be memorialized accurately. And so I'm happy to have that conversation. The second thing I was going to say is I think that there's been a real tension for us in this work between two sort of slightly like orthogonal views. One, right, like the more specific we are about exactly what should happen, the more prescriptive it sounds. And I think there's been a desire for us to not prejudge the outcome of such a study. And so if it says study these things specifically in this particular model, that suggests that we think that should be the model and these should be the things. And then some folks who think that maybe those aren't the things and this isn't the model say, well, we shouldn't prejudge this and say that those are the things. And so I just want to name that tension, because I think we have been trying to accommodate, we had a much more prescriptive version and we were trying to accommodate views that maybe there were other options out there that were preferred and that should be considered in this. And that's something that I think we're going to have to grapple with in this explanatory text regardless, right? And so I just wanted to name that because the more specific we get about what is being studied, the more it sounds like we think this is the thing that should happen, study it, right? And so that comes with sort of like an implicit judgment call in there.
Thanks, Margaret. I see Rick's hand is up. Rick, go ahead, please.
Well, I'm fearful I don't have anything really constructive to say, but Jason laid down a challenge that we must participate in, and I'm not one to shy away from a challenge, so I'll say that. I just want to say, as an observer, really, I feel to this subject I still feel new, even though I'm about to go off our committee, that there has always struck me that there's something of a gap between what OGIS and the advisory committee are able to do and what needs to be done. And that gap is sort of in having the resources to do the kind of big picture or meta inquiry into what is possible and what can change. And that's what I like about the recommendation, because it seems to just sort of be going at that gap and saying, look, this sooner or later, this needs to be filled. Let's think big and find out what the possibilities are with the appropriate resources. I do, of course, share Jason's reservation, and to my mind, Dave put it best in terms of just, anytime you're handing instructions over to a legislative entity, you don't know what's going to happen. So I'm afraid that's not perhaps constructive, only to say that I do have support. I don't want Jason to think I was asleep. That's all. I do have support for the recommendation and caution about the implementation of it. And if that can be corralled with text in the commentary, then great. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Rick. Anyone else? I don't see any other hands up, and no one else is accepting Jason's gauntlet that has been thrown down. Okay. Ryan, Whitney, are you prepared to move forward with this recommendation? Should we take a vote?
Whitney, PVGC, I think that we should move forward with voting. So
Okay.
I would make a motion to adopt SR 6.
Okay, so moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
I second it.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Margaret, for the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions?
I'll abstain, Lena.
Nieva abstains.
Okay.
Abstain.
Abstain.
All right, hold on. I've heard lots of different people.
All right, so Jason's abstaining. Hi, it's Dan. I'll do a roll call of the abstentions. Jason abstains. Nieva abstains. Whitney, did I hear an abstention?
No.
Okay. Sean, did I hear an abstention?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Liz?
Scott abstained.
Oh, Scott abstains, okay. Alina, did you abstain?
No.
You did not abstain.
I voted
Okay.
aye.
Okay. Were there any, so I have four abstentions.
Marianne abstained.
Marianne abstains. Thank you, Marianne. All right, I have 5 abstentions. Jason?
I did not abstain, Dan. This is Liz. I heard you say my name. I wasn't sure.
Oh, I was just going down, and I thought I should
Okay.
stop skipping people and start affirmatively verifying. So I have 5 abstentions. That is Jason, Nieva, Sean, Scott, and Marianne, and everyone else was an aye. Is that correct? Okay.
Everyone's
So
shaking
then
their heads, so that's a good sign.
All right. So the motion passes 11-0 with 5 abstentions.
Okay. Thank you. Great work, everyone. Any other comments from Ryan and Whitney for your subcommittee?
Wait, could you clarify that vote count? Wasn't the last vote 11-0 to 4? How is it 11-0 to 5 now? Or am I
I think the
misremembering?
last one was 11-0 to 5 as well.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wasn't
Apologies.
Yeah.
Yes, Kimberly
Yes.
Wanted to
Reed,
double
the
check.
alternate DFO. I am tracking the votes on our spreadsheet. The previous vote, SR5, Ryan moved, Margaret seconded. It passed 11 to 5 with 5 abstentions. SR6, Whitney moved, Ryan seconded. It passed 11 to 0 with 5 abstaining.
Thank you.
Sure thing. All right.
Ryan, anything else?
Not unless I don't have anything, no.
Okay, just wanted to double check. Whitney?
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Well, great work, everyone. I think we should all pat ourselves on the back, do a little hand clap. I think everyone has worked very, very hard. I very much appreciate all the commentary that has gone on today. I think it's all been very valuable. I've taken a lot of notes. I think the working group for the final report has a lot to work on. We thought it was going to be easy, but perhaps not so much. So we will endeavor to do our best. And I know I've taken some notes, so hopefully with everyone's notes, we will capture everything that was discussed today. If anyone doesn't have anything else they want to bring up on the committee, I'd like to turn to our last part of our meeting, which is the public comment section. Do I have permission to do that? Seems like yes, I'm getting nods. Okay. Thank you for putting up that next slide. We have now reached the public comments part of our committee meeting. We look forward to hearing from any non-committee participants who have ideas or comments to share, particularly about all the topics that we discussed today, which were a lot. All oral comments are captured in the transcript of the meeting, which we will post as soon as it is available. Oral comments are also captured in the NARA YouTube recording and are available on the NARA YouTube channel. And as a reminder, public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Dan to check in to see if we've had anything that's come up in chat, even though we're not supposed to put anything substantive in chat. Some folks do. So I just wanted to double check with you on that.
I do not see anything substantive in the chat.
Okay. Dan, anything else?
Okay. So I just wanted to note that written public comments are welcome at any time. You can visit archives.gov/OGIS/public comments, public-comments to submit your written public comments through our public comment portal. And if anyone wishes to make an oral public comment, please raise your hand so that we can unmute you. If you are dialed in through telephone audio, you can press *9 on your telephone to raise your hand to join the comment queue. So I'll give everyone a moment for that. Okay, I do not see anyone in the queue. So, Alina, did you have anything else to add?
Well, let's give folks just one more minute in case anyone else wants to chime in. I know we don't have that many attendees with us today on the Zoom for government call. So perhaps many of our viewers are watching us on the NARA YouTube channel. So they're not able to comment. And but anyway, just wanted to give just one more second. But I also don't want to belabor this meeting because we're getting close to 1. I would love to give the gift of time back to all of your, to recognize all the hard work that you committee members have put in. So, okay, so let's go ahead and start wrapping up. Before we adjourn, I genuinely want to offer a very heartfelt thank you to all of our committee members. Unbelievably, we have now completed 11 public meetings, but we all know the real work has happened between those meetings, and there has been an incredible amount of work happening across the subcommittees and working groups, and I'm very grateful for all the collaboration and thoughtful discussion that has been taking place. Really, what has impressed me the most is not only the quality of the discussions during our public meetings, but also the tremendous amount of work taking place between meetings, within the subcommittees, within the working groups, and through countless conversations and collaborations. And the level of engagement this term has been remarkable. I continue to be impressed by everyone's energy, creativity, and thoughtfulness that each of you brings to these discussions. And we have all tackled some very difficult issues, challenged one another respectfully, and we have remained focused on finding meaningful ways to improve the FOIA process. So again, a great debt of gratitude to everyone. I especially want to extend a special thank you to our 6 subcommittee co-chairs. Your leadership has been essential to keeping efforts moving forward, and you have created space for productive and engaging discussion. So thank you to Ryan and Whitney and Nick and Yeva and Jason and Marianne. I think I got all that right off the top of my head. On behalf of OGIS, again, thank you for everyone's commitment, everyone's expertise, and everyone's willingness to volunteer. We know you're all volunteers, you're volunteering your time, and you have many other things to be doing. And I think we're all very grateful for the volunteer time you have given in service of government transparency. And we are very fortunate to have such an engaged and dedicated committee term. So I thank you again. Any questions or comments before we adjourn? I was just looking around. I don't see any hands. Okay. I just want to remind everyone, our final full committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, July 16th, 2026 at 10 a.m. The working group who's drafting the final report is endeavoring to wrap everything up and have it posted. I'm looking at Shelley, I'm looking at Frank, I'm looking at Sarah by July 9th. That is our target. That would give the committee members a full week before the meeting to actually look at the report, digest, make any comments, propose any edits, etc. So just keep that date in mind. We're actually working backwards from that date. I know, Shelley, to try to get internal deadlines are a little bit sooner than that, but that I just wanted to put that deadline out there for committee members to know what they're going to be anticipating. So with that, I don't see anyone else jumping up and down or raising their hand. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope everyone and their families remain safe, healthy, and resilient. And not hearing any other questions or comments, we stand adjourned. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.